When you sleep at night in the pale moonlight, do you dream? Do you dream? Do you dream? Do you laugh? Do you laugh? When you hear a joke about a giant giraffe, do you laugh? Do you laugh? Do you laugh? Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream a dream. Do you love? Do you love? Fit someone like a hand in glove. Do you love? Do you love? Do you love? Do you dance? Do you dance? Feel. Do you dance? Do you dance? Do you dance? Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream a dream. Do you cry? Do you cry when you finally have to say goodbye? Do you cry? Do you cry? Do you cry? Do you smile? Do you smile? Big and bright and young and wild. Do you smile? Do you smile? Do you smile? Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream. Calling all dreamers dream a dream. Do you dream? Do you dream? When you sleep at night in the pale moonlight, do you dream? Do you dream? Do you dream?
Good morning. My name is Ken Claiborne, and I'm a member of the board of this congregation. Welcome to you all. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart is a welcoming community encouraging religious freedom, nurturing individual spiritual and ethical growth, celebrating diversity, and promoting a just and sustainable world. If you would like to learn more about this fellowship, please look at our website at uufe.org and join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Judy Darnell, and I'm presenting the Fellowship Life this morning. And I welcome everybody. The board is wrapping up the first set of our small group meetings. The next meeting is at 10 a.m. tomorrow. If you are not part of a small group and would like to participate, please contact Board President Carl Rust, and he will contact the facilitator. Due to a generous donation to the food pantry, we were able to fill some of the shelves in the pantry, enough to fill the pantry box for about a week. Please remember the pantry when you do your regular shopping, and drop off your gift at the church. You can contact me if you would like to meet me at the church to make your donation delivery. And if you want to accumulate things over several weeks and make a bigger donation, that's definitely something you can do. We also need help filling the pantry. It only takes 5 or 10 minutes once a week to fill the box. Give me a call or an email to volunteer. My information's in the directory, and I don't do texts. Mike and I are starting to gather information for the March focus. If you have news for the newsletter, please contact me before the 25th. Last week's shared plate collection came to $60 for the Sustainability Fund, which is used for the maintenance and repairs around the buildings and grounds. Thank you for your help. This week's collection will be shared with the Center for Healing and Hope, which offers healthcare for the uninsured and those who cannot otherwise afford healthcare. That's it for this week. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, so be sure to be sweet to someone. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. I really appreciate everything that you're doing and everybody's doing to try to keep us going for hopefully just a few more weeks before we can actually see some faces in person. So as Judy mentioned, round one of small groups wrapping up. Round one is like the initial questions that we want to ask, somewhat focused on the past and the present. And we want to try to reach out to everyone. So if you haven't been part of a small group and you can't do the 10 a.m. tomorrow, we're probably going to be calling you. Somebody from the board is going to be giving you a call to talk to you. So if you get weird phone numbers and you don't know who it is, listen to your voicemail and call us back. Because I know if you're like me, you don't answer if you don't recognize the number. Kudos to everybody's keeping the food pantry filled up. That's great. I also want to let you know that the board is preparing a letter in opposition to Indiana House Bill 1134, I believe is the number, that would make teachers and kids' lives at school much more oppressive and much more restricted, and would create an atmosphere of anxiety and fear. If you are interested, the ISTA, the Indiana State Teachers Association, is asking for people who are able to come down to meet with legislators in person. You can also go to their website. I'm going to put the link in here in a minute. You can also go to the website and tweet, email, whatever kind of form of communication you like to use. That is helpful to the teachers. And we want to let the legislators know that we support teacher and student freedom. Story for All Ages was kind of, Laura brought that last week, and I thought that was really cool. So I've got one for you for today. And it is the question, this video is about, can kids change the world? So let me get that ready here. And I will, no, I can't do that. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. All right, here we go.
Can kids change the world? It all started with a trip. The year was 1958. A little girl named Ayana Najuma was 7 years old. She and 19 other kids went on a trip far from their home in Oklahoma. They went up north to New York City. In New York, the kids noticed something. White people and African American people could use the same water fountains. They could eat in the same restaurants. They could even sleep next door to each other in hotels. That may not sound strange to you, but it was strange to Ayana and her friends. They were African American kids from the South. At that time, the southern part of our country was segregated. That means that African American people and white people were kept apart. In Oklahoma City, where the kids lived, water fountains had signs that said whites only. African American kids and white kids couldn't go to school together. They couldn't eat in the same restaurants. The kids were amazed at how different New York City was from the South. When they got back to Oklahoma, they said, "Why do we have to live this way?" They knew the way their community was set up was wrong. White people had more rights than African American people. The kids made a plan to fix things. But would it work? The kids decided to get the restaurants to change so that African American people were allowed to eat in them. It could be dangerous to try to do that. Many people would be angry, but the kids were brave. They planned a sit-in. At a sit-in, you sit in a restaurant and ask to be served. You don't leave until you are served. It's a peaceful way to change something that is unfair. The kids went into training with a group of African American adults. In training, these adults taught the kids about nonviolence. They taught them about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Many people didn't want African American people to eat in a whites-only restaurant. The kids learned that people would be unkind. The kids learned that they had to stay calm and be peaceful, no matter how badly others behaved. In training, the adults yelled at the kids. They threw water on them. The kids practiced being calm and not yelling back. Soon, they were ready to do their first sit-in. The kids' first sit-in was at the Katz lunch counter. It was a whites-only restaurant. Ayanna went with about 12 other kids. They all wore their best clothes. They went in and sat down. They were polite. Ayanna asked for a hamburger and a Coke. The waitress said no. The other customers were angry. They didn't like that African American kids were trying to change the restaurant. They did not want it to be integrated so that everyone was allowed to eat there. The other customers yelled at the kids. They poured ketchup and coffee on them. Ayanna says, "I wasn't scared. I knew I was doing the right thing." The kids didn't yell. They didn't fight. They sat quietly and talked with each other. They had brought magazines and coloring books. At the end of the day, the restaurant closed. The kids had to go. The next day, they went back. They ordered food again. No one gave it to them, but they were not going to give up. They were determined. On the third day, the kids ordered food. This time, the waitress brought it to them. From that day on, the Katz lunch counter was integrated. Anyone could eat there. The kids were so happy. They had made one place in their community better. Ayanna had learned something. She says, "I was little, but my voice was just as important as everyone else's voice." But their work wasn't done. So many restaurants in their community were segregated. Over the next 6 years, the kids did sit-ins at many restaurants. More and more kids joined each time. The restaurant owners got pretty clever about trying to keep the kids away. At one restaurant, workers took away all the chairs. There was no place to sit. But would that stop the kids? No. Ayanna's little sister Lana had the right idea. When she didn't have a chair to sit on, she just leaned on the table. In most places, people wouldn't let the kids use the bathroom. That wasn't going to stop the kids either. One by one, the kids integrated the restaurants in their town. The kids had changed their city. One small group of kids had made their community better for everyone. They may have been little, but their voices were huge.
Good morning. Our chalice today from our home is a chalice that was given to Don by his parents many years ago. So that is the chalice we have at home. Our chalice lighting today is from Summer Albayada. In betwixt, oops. First I'll light the chalice. In betwixt and in between, we move into the liminal spaces that show shades of what can become and what can be. We light this chalice as a symbol of courage to move into that time of this and that, and not this and not that. With patience and faith and love and hope that this time will pass like the sun that moves in between rising and setting, reminding us that beauty resounds in betwixt and in between.
Love is the spirit of this church, and
Service is its law,
to dwell
to dwell together in peace,
to
to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
This
This is our covenant.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Dreamers Dreaming. If you could dream any future you wanted, what would it look like? What do we want for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, and so on and so on and so on? Sometimes I think about two science fiction franchises and how they have a slightly different view of what the future will be. So first of all, I am not an expert in anything except maybe working with kids and writing songs. So I may say something here that an expert in Star Wars or Star Trek will find absurd and wrong. Sorry about that, Chief. This is just my viewpoint. So in the way I look at it, in the Star Wars future, people are battling each other for supremacy. One culture is battling another to prove they're the best. It's still capitalist society where the strong succeed and the weak perish. Now, Star Wars fans, don't throw anything at the screen. In your vast storyline and piles of books and movies, I'm sure there are exceptions. So I'm generalizing. In the Star Trek future, there is an abundance of resources. Money has been abolished. Every person has suitable housing, clothing, food, and a meaningful occupation if they want one, and who doesn't? No matter what our Republican friends say. I know there are enemies out there in the Star Trek universe, but the heroes of the story tend to try to talk to the enemies first before firing their phasers. In his book, dropping things, Education in a Time Between Worlds, essays on the future of schools, technology, and society, Zachary Stein talks about how we can get to the Star Trek future, as I have way oversimplified it. So this morning in part one, I'm going to look at part of what he's identified as the 13 social miracles in his chapter 4 entitled 13 Social Miracles Creating Educational Abundance. Now, originally, I was going to list all 13 of them, and I thought, well, that's a lot for you to hear. So I'm just going to surprise you and start diving right in with number one. But before I get to that, I want you to note that these are social miracles. And some techno-optimists among us think that science and technology is going to come along with the answers to all the questions, and they're going to solve all the problems. And Stein would disagree with that. He says what we need is not technological miracles. What we need are social miracles. So the first one that he talks about, got the right page here, is the debt jubilee for students and nations. And I quote from him from page 205 and 206. He says, in the ancient world, jubilees were known to occur once a generation or so. So in a debt jubilee, the leaders decree that all financial and moral debt is forgiven. How would it affect you and the people that you know if there was a debt jubilee, if all debt was canceled? Personally, I'm still carrying student loan debt. And I have a mortgage, so it would be a big deal for me. I'm sure there's a lot of other people. The ancient Israelites actually encoded into their law that every 7 years was a debt jubilee. What could be the effects of a worldwide debt jubilee for individuals and nations? It could mean the end of poverty. It could free people to pursue dreams of higher education, more creative and satisfying, although maybe lower paying jobs. It could stimulate the economy by freeing people from paying high interest rates, which do not recirculate in the local economy, and allow them to participate more fully in the local economy. I find when I start looking back at Stein's book, he says things so much better than me that I might as well just read. So I'm going to read a little bit from page 206 here. He says, depression, anxiety, and destroyed families often result from predatory mortgages, credit cards, and educational loan practices. On a larger scale, consider the geopolitical tensions that circulate around the International Monetary Fund and World Bank debt repayments. In all cases, the structures forced upon the indebted by virtue of their status are, to put it mildly, far from conducive to the realization of lifelong learning and the actualization of human potential. So when you owe a lot of money, it's hard to concentrate on self-improvement. You're worried about getting the bucks together to pay your loans. And that would vastly improve conditions in third world countries, which often face staggering debt to provide for basic needs and infrastructure. Impossible, you may say, but remember, we're dreaming here. Number 2 on his list is a basic income guarantee. And we've kind of already experienced this in a way during the pandemic. A lot of us got stimulus checks. And it still continues on. It's a little bit disguised as what used to be called earned income credit, but now it comes monthly to people that have kids. So to me, guaranteed monthly income is one of the first steps towards a Star Trek moneyless future. So on page 209, Stein quotes from another author, Scott Santens, who wrote a book called Basic Income Guarantee. And Santens says that the rich people in the world, when it comes to a monthly income guarantee of, say, $1,000 a month, he said this is exactly what the richest should want. Because although they would pay more in taxes for universal basic income, leaving them a slightly thinner, although still very thick, slice of the overall pie, the slice of pie itself would grow, leaving them even better off as well. This is largely due to the economic multiplier effects, where $1 given to those with lower incomes has 3 times the growth effects on GDP as giving the same dollar to those who already have a great many dollars. Meanwhile, as if all of the above isn't enough to show how affordable $1,000 per month universal basic income actually is, it's vital we understand just how much less we can spend as a society simply by preventing all the costs of poverty that we'd never have to pay in the first place anymore. And so that made me think, okay, what does he mean by costs of poverty? And these are a few things that I came up with. Well, obviously welfare. If we're giving people $1,000 income a month, that's going to eliminate most of the need to have welfare, which is a vastly inefficient bureaucratic system. Theft and vandalism, because people that don't have sometimes decide they're going to take it. And then they get sent to prison, and we pay taxes to keep people in prison. That's a major expense that maybe we wouldn't have. And we also know that criminal behavior is usually caused by hopelessness, and hopelessness is usually caused by joblessness or lack of income. I also thought of unpaid medical bills, urban blight, other things, and there are probably more that I haven't really thought about. So that's the second dream. Third dream, or third miracle, an integral, decentralized social safety net, including healthcare, education, welfare, those kind of things. And the question I have is, should anyone die or lose their home because they lost their job, got sick, or became disabled? And we have programs in place to try to prevent this, but how well do they work? They're vastly bureaucratic, very centralized, inefficient, and inhuman. And Stein argues for a local democratic approach to helping people who are in trouble. Local people understand the needs of their localities, and they understand the needs of their neighbors. He also argues for a guaranteed quality education through graduate school, democratically and locally controlled and free. In Stein's future, education, healthcare, and basic needs can be abundant. As he says in several places, what we lack is not resources, it's imagination. What if we could redesign the system from the ground up? Bear in mind that a debt jubilee and basic income guarantee would already be helping people in need. So I've got another quote here from his book on page 212. It cannot be stressed enough that an integral social safety net must not be modeled on the social welfare state of the old left, nor on the market-based service industries of the new right. The idea here is to empower local communities in ways that increase freedom, choice, and innovation, the best of a market-based system, while also assuring that there are available to everyone through fair channels of distribution, the best of the state-based solutions. This means transforming things like education and healthcare into abundant and non-rivalrous goods. Creating systems in which education or health, for me, does not mean, let me start that over. Creating systems in which more education or health for me does not mean less education and health for you. Notice that Stein uses the word integral, and I'm not pronouncing that very well, but Stein is definitely a disciple of Ken Wilber, whose ideas about life and reality could be a topic for a whole series of sermons. Dreaming continues ahead. Number 4, democratic governments, workplaces, and schools. How democratic are the world's democratic governments today? To what degree have we slipped into oligarchy or totalitarianism stamped with the label democratic? So on page 214 in his book, this is what Stein has to say. Many democracies around the world, but especially in the United States, have largely devolved into dysfunctional oligarchies. Public participation has regressed into viewing of carefully crafted political spectacles, which are followed by voting, a process akin to watching advertising and then going out to make a purchase. And then, of course, there are still countless millions living in societies that are radically non-democratic and openly opposed to the principles of democratic governance. These regimes range from totalitarian dictatorships to fundamentalist theocracies, creating geopolitical pockets of unspeakable suffering and appalling ignorance. What if all our institutions were democratic? Of course, the one I know the most about is school, and school in most cases is dramatically undemocratic. They are at best oligarchies where a few teachers, administrators, and maybe a parent or two make decisions, and the other 300 to 1,000 people have little or no say in what happens. At worst, they are dictatorships where one administrator controls all decision making. Businesses and other institutions are most likely similar. I have held a number of jobs over the years, and I can't think of one right now that was run democratically. Even when I worked for my family company, which was me, my brother, my mom and dad, and my sister-in-law, we didn't vote on stuff. If you establish the ground rules, democracy can be quite effective in these settings. Sounds a little crazy to think of 5-year-olds and little kids being involved in democracy. And even workers at a company, are they going to have the best interests of the company in mind, or are they just going to want a 2-hour work day or a 2-day work week? I think you can establish the ground rules, and democracy can be quite effective. It can lead to quicker innovation, more efficient processes, and happier workers/students. I've seen it work with kids as young as 4, believe it or not. It takes time and patience, but if it becomes the norm, then a lot of the barriers kind of melt away. Number 5, this is the 5th miracle. Public regulation of investment and finance sectors. This one seems so obvious that I don't think I need to spend a lot of time talking about it. All you need to do is look back at the financial collapse of 2008 and lots of others in history, to realize what happens when you let speculators and gamblers free rein to invent schemes that are designed only to make profits and do not produce any value. Even philanthropy from the very rich puts the power into the hands of just a few people, which furthers the anti-democratic slide. When I was kind of Googling some of these topics, it was interesting when I Googled financial regulation, the first 10 things that popped up were ads from places like Edward Jones trying to get me to regulate my own finances. Maybe it's my age, I don't know. Okay, number 6, and this is going to be the last one for today. The 6th miracle that Stein talks about is legal and economic systems that value the biosphere for its own sake. Business as usual. How often have we heard that? Business as usual is not how we're going to save the biosphere. We will definitely have to change the status quo in many areas if we are to survive as a planet and as a species. So on page 220, this is what Stein first talks a little bit about some things that we need to do in order to save the biosphere. And then he says this: to put it bluntly, respecting the biosphere in this way will not be profitable in the traditional sense of the word. Despite the continued greenwashing of status quo business models, there's no way to make a profit in any traditional sense by capitalizing on what needs to be done to transform humanity's relation to the biosphere. For example, the preservation of large tracts of land and the dismantling of entire industries is not business as usual. Educating children into anti-consumerist lifestyles and ecological awareness is also not good for business as usual. Imagine if a whole generation really did not buy things that were bad for the environment. As the discussion of finance above suggests, it is hard to raise money for ventures that will not turn a monetary profit, let alone ones that literally depend on gifting, as in the donation of land to conservation. We have to change our way of thinking and our way of doing business. If we become extinct because we've used up all the resources that the world has, business as usual won't mean anything, and all the other social miracles will be moot. So to conclude for today, I have brought to you ideas that you may or may not have considered before. I ask you to consider or reconsider them now. Next time, which is scheduled for March 13th, I don't know if you noticed, February 13th, 13 miracles, March 13th, 13 miracles. I will try to go over the other 7. I'm not sure I'll be able to finish in another session. But for now, I'll leave you with these questions. How can we get from where we are to where we want to be? Are these miracles even possible? Stein seems to think that some of them are not as far out as you think. And for example, a universal basic income is kind of creeping in already. What do you think? What kind of future do you dream about? Is a Star Trek future possible? Stick around for coffee hour and let me know what you think. And keep on dreaming. Thanks everybody for being here. For the benediction today, I'm going to do a reading by Mark L. Bellantini. Go in peace, live simply, gently, at home in yourselves, act justly, speak justly. Remember the depths of your own compassion. Forget not your powers in the days of your powerlessness. Do not desire to be wealthier than your peers, and stint not your hand of charity. Practice forbearance. Speak the truth or speak not. Take care of yourselves as bodies, for you are a good gift. Crave peace for all people in the world, beginning with yourselves, and go as you go with the dream of that peace alive in your heart. Blessed be, go in peace, and here's the postlude.